Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another edition of Beauty, Strength, and Dominance, the official LFC Lingerie Fighting Championships podcast. My name is Mike Larkin, and joining me tonight is LFC prospect, LFC Madness contestant, participant, Miss Rachel Adams. Rachel, it's a pleasure to have you on the show. How are you?
Nice to be here. I'm good.
I cannot complain. First and foremost, Rachel, we got to talk about this. You did an amazing job in LFC Madness. You got to round 3. You got very far in the tournament. It was great to see you in the tournament. How was that experience for you?
It was fun. It was nice to see all the people that supported me come out and vote in a different arena than I think they're used to seeing me in. Because I think most of the fan base that I had that went to see me on there wouldn't normally watch wrestling, if that makes sense.
Oh, absolutely. I look at it from a stance too, as well, from the variety side of things and just everything that's different and unique. I think LFC provides that all around and with the different combative natures and stuff. So it brings everybody together and it's a fun environment for everyone. Now,
There's a huge variety of people in that competition.
Absolutely. And first and foremost, we got to talk about the competition because you made it through against September Rain. London Storm, who had a very emotional story coming from addiction to finding that empowerment and being involved in the LFC Madness. And then you get to Betty Brickhouse, who will go on to the finals. And now it is Betty Brickhouse and Amber Pixie at the next LFC Booty Camp event. Talk about this because you go from September, you go from London, and then you hit Betty Brickhouse. Talk about going there, round 3, almost there to the semis, Betty Brickhouse. Talk about that experience and your opponents.
Well, with it being virtual, I didn't really have any contact with my opponents.
Right.
But the one that I communicated with the most, I think, was Betty, because she posted a lot more online and we had a lot more interaction on Twitter with it. I think it's a whole different experience when it's all virtual because you almost feel like you're competing against yourself more than other people, if that makes sense. They're trying to funnel whoever you can to the pages to be voting and everything else. But it's hard because you never know who's going to come out above who, because it's all down to the wire on who's voting for who. So I try not to watch the last day.
Totally
just to see how it's going to pan out.
Totally understand. I look at it from a stance from as well, like you mentioned, it is all virtually, and it's a great tournament to give some such prospects like yourself and so many people an avenue to get into the LFC that is Lingerie Fighting Championships. I got to say, for someone like yourself, and I've seen a lot of your work, which we'll dive into today, and I'm a fan and I have a lot of love and respect for what you do. It's one of those things where it's just like, God dang, man, a lot of people that should be, or we should have come into LFC are in there. And I got to say, you are no exception because God dang, man, you killed it. I'm very happy to see how far you went though.
Thank you. Yeah, I was not sure how my normal audience would approach it, but it was nice that they all came out and supported me anyway, because it's not normally what I shoot. So I'm sure it was a whole different ball game to see me doing that than what I normally do.
Well, Miss Adams,
they followed me, so that was great.
Of course, and from an imagery standpoint, and I don't mean to cut you off, but I mean, you do work it, man. From what we're doing, we're going to get into the modeling side of things and your bondage work. But I think with what you provide and your content and your overall creation, the content creation side of things, I think it does do a lot for a lot of the audience, and I think you have great clientele with it.
Thank you. I think it turned out really well. I wasn't sure, honestly, when I first started that competition. There are so many people, and a lot of people who have been doing a lot more competitive wrestling or session wrestling than I do. So it was nice to see how far I progressed with it.
I got to say, you are going to be a staple and someone to be on the lookout for an LFC in the future. So I got to say,
I hope so.
I believe so as well. And I look at it from a stance too as well. You were one of the favorites in there. So I got to say, being a fan favorite and being one of the favorites, it was great to see you in the end. And I got to say, are you looking forward now? The Betty Brickhouse Amber Pixie match, where it's a very David and Goliath, but I got to say, it's something for everyone to really check out. It's the international battle between Betty and Amber, who's from Italy. So, I mean, it works out for everybody, right?
Yeah, I'm curious how it'll turn out, because honestly, it's very night and day on the competition. They're very different people with very different styles. So it should be interesting to see how it pans out.
I will say this about you. What does pan out is a lot of the great work that we've seen you done from the modeling side of things and the bondage side of things. I think what we get is a lot of great uniqueness, and we mentioned a lot of great content, but I love that type of feel because it's such a great preference. Because if you look at it from a stance, everyone's unique. We all like what we like. So for you, how did the whole bondage thing coming together? Because I got to say, you do what you do with your content, but it's great to see that really being heightened because it's such a great market.
Well, I started off as a commercial print model, and I did a lot of like advertising, and this was, gosh, forever ago. Back in like 2000, I started doing commercial print modeling for advertisements and like brochures and stuff. And then I went from doing that to doing more fashion things like hair advertisements or makeup ads online. And then from there, I went to doing art nudes, and it kind of just progressed into doing like fetishy photography that kind of just morphed into the video work. So I kind of went from a whole different avenue than a lot of other people. I went from like mainstream modeling world into the fetish world just because I knew somebody in person. Like I met them just like in regular life, not online, that did the photography and the video work. And they kind of got me into it from there. And that would have been back in like 2008, I think.
Well, first and foremost, it's amazing to see, because you were talking about from forever ago. Like, it's amazing, like, to think that 2008 is now 14 years ago, for God's sake. My goodness. But it's one of those things too, as well, from where we were marketed from the sex appeal aspect and the modeling from the 2000s to mid 2000s. America's Next Top Model is all the rage. We have that imagery of Tyra Banks and her show, right? It's one of the things where modeling has progressed so much from just amazing women and beautiful women like yourself, Rachel. And we see in the plus side of things, it's women of all different shapes and sizes. And it's great to just see the evolution of how modeling is.
It's changed a lot over the years. Like when I first started, there wasn't a lot of acceptance of other body shapes. It was more, they wanted people who were very tall and kind of heroin chic, I think was the terminology back then. They wanted everyone to be a certain build, and they didn't really accept people who had curves or were strong or were a different build than the norm. So it's been like nowadays it's a whole lot more inclusive, and I think there's a spot for everybody, which is a nice change to see.
One, absolutely. And I think for me, like when it comes to women in general, my biggest influence is my mom. And this is where the beauty, strength, and mind dominance mindset comes in. It's one of the things when you have like an empowering female in your life, and when you have someone who's very empowering from a female in general, it's great to see that shine through in every woman's line of work, what have you. It's great to see women like yourself have really been changing the game, and just to see a very much a focal point and put it much at the forefront of what we see from women's combative natures in sports.
Thank you. Yeah, it's been nice to see the changeover, that people are actually accepting the people that are strong and capable rather than what used to be more vied after when it came to modeling. It's been a nice shift to see that.
I look at it from a sense too. Like I grew up in the 90s, like we mentioned Tyra Banks. Like my first imagery of her, besides Life Size with Lindsay Lohan, you had her in the Good Burger role with Ed, you know, one of the All That sketches. You had Naomi Campbell, who was in the Closet with Michael Jackson, that infamous music video. So it's amazing just to see for me. And what I always love about the modeling side of things, we talk about the evolution. Empowerment is a huge thing when it comes to women and just in general. Like with LFC, I always compare it to, and I think you can agree with me on this, it's beautiful women of different art forms and different shapes and sizes, but we add that sex appeal. And that's also what's very common. You hear the term sex sells, very cliche, but it's very true. And in anything, we need a little bit of sex appeal, right?
Yeah, it's a big part of everything. Like people, like there's been a large amount of people that try and deny that, but I mean, it's a huge part of advertising, all types of advertising, really, not just like fetish work or modeling or wrestling or anything. I think every form of advertising you see nowadays has they try and add something to it, something sexy or something to draw you in, some kind of pull. So I think it's huge, and really most arenas. People don't really want to admit it sometimes.
Oh, absolutely. And I think from a stance too as well, you got me all smiling talking about this, that gravitational pull. It's one of those things. And I could say for myself as a fan and a follower of your work, that gravitational pull. Okay, I want to see a bondage scene. I want you to see you do your thing with Miss Bella Inc., which you two have great chemistry. But I want to see something that captures the eye of what we see with your content and your imagery. It shows every single thing that I've seen you done. I love it because you're having fun, and it definitely shows with your work, and it comes across on that screen, Rachel.
I try and make it so people want to watch it. That's always the goal, you know, because you don't want to produce something that no one's going to want to see. So what's the point in making it then, you know?
Absolutely. That's
put a lot of effort into it.
I like that. And I think from a stance of like the do it yourself, which is a big thing, the DIY, and you just that thing, we need that camaraderie. And it's not just a business acumen, but it's one of those things. If you're not going to give it your all, like you so eloquently stated, then why do it? And I think in such a world like we see with fetish, and we talk about uniqueness and preferences, the bondage world of being tied up, you can include that with dominatrix, you can include foot fetish, what have you. There's something for everybody, and people like we talked about, something that was somewhat of taboo, so to speak. It's just something that's really accepted. And I love to see the acceptance and the growth of the overall industry.
Yeah, it seems like as time goes on, it's all becoming a little more accepted. It's it seems to be less taboo, which is nice. It's like, I know years ago it was something that people would have never been willing to accept, but now it seems to be that people are more open-minded as time goes on, which is nice. It's a nice change. That's not as taboo as it used to be. If you can actually have a regular conversation about it and it's not as crazy to bring it up in conversation, you know?
Right. I remember as a kid, like MTV, when they actually had True Life. Now, this was before MTV stopped with all the music videos, and then we just had the catfishes and the Jersey Shores, and it became reality television.
Yep.
Substitute the M with the R. I remember True Life was all the rage. You had the documentaries. There were some wrestling documentaries in there as well, but they did one True Life I'm a Dominatrix, and it showcased the world of the dominatrix side of things. Now, mind you, this was the mid 2000s, and it's like, whoa, but at the same time, we get to see just how epic and how great a content or a shoot of that is. Because I got to say, sometimes us men, we need a little bit of a good whipping. And it's something that really showcases the female empowerment and something that is, a turn on for guys or gals.
Mm-hmm. I think that for a long time, it was something that was kind of in the dark. No one talked about it. No one wanted to admit it was the thing, but it's way more accepted now and more in the forefront of things, which is a nice change to see, because I've been doing this for a long time. And it seems like when I first started, it was never something you could have a regular conversation with somebody that wasn't in the industry about, but now it's a lot more accepted, which is nice that you can have a regular conversation and people will talk to you about it without it being such a taboo topic.
I mean, it has to. I mean, God, I mean, I love me some Sade. Take it back to the pop culture. And we had the sweetest taboo. This is what we have now, to quote the great Sade. It's the sweetest taboo, and what we see from the modeling side of things and the fetish work. And I got to say, I mentioned the name earlier, Bella Inc., coinciding with LFC Lingerie Fighting Championships. You two have that great chemistry, and you two have some of the best stories out there. And I love to see every time you two are both on screen together. You really do work that magic.
It's a whole lot of fun. It's a whole lot of fun. I've known her for a number of years. She's been wrestling with you guys for a long time too.
Yep, she came in around LFC 26 Booty Camp 3D, and she's here. We're going into LFC 36. It's wonderful to see her progression. Now,
She's always
absolutely. And I look at it from a stance too as well. With Bella, we talk about the fun side of things, but if you have that camaraderie and you have that chemistry, it's one of those things where you can't beat it. And as well, who doesn't love a good bondage film? Who doesn't love a good fetish type of film? Like, that really does showcase, and it's something that I really love. And I think a lot of people, like we were talking about, the open-mindedness, which is very clear and at the forefront of this conversation. We need to get it out there to people, man, because it's something that really needs to be seen, and we'll keep it from the underground and put it at the forefront,
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And I think with you as well, from the imagery side of things, and this is what I love as well, I always dive into the women are a work of art, which is very true. All shapes and sizes, it doesn't matter. I think when we see pictures of yourself, whether it be in lingerie, whether it be the bondage side of things, whether it be bikini, what have you, you always have that elegance about you. And this is what I love about you. You have that elegance in class, but you also got that edge to you. And I got to say, it really does showcase on the photos. You do take a lot of beautiful photos.
Thank you. I take a lot of photos.
It's true, but that's the name of the game, if you will, to quote Thunder Lips. That's the name of the game, little Rocky 3 action. And it works, and it does suit you very well, Rachel.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. Now, the world of LFC Lingerie Fighting Championships kind of equates to, and I like the LFL. You look at the Lingerie Football League, whether it be, beautiful females, sex appeal to playing football, right? And women like Summer Rae, who was in the WWE, just came back, is actually an all-star of LFL. And I always loved how the two kind of coincide, so to speak. So for you, when that LFC debut comes, and I know it will, I always love to ask this question. Not it's just because of the fighting stance and the opponents. It's the entrance, it's the glitz, it's the glamour, it's the pageantry. So I have to ask you, Rachel Adams, what can the LFC fans expect from the lingerie side of things? Because we've had some glamorous entrances. What can we expect from the lingerie? What are you thinking about cooking up there from the style and finesse side of things?
Honestly, I have no idea. I'll probably be a surprise, because it has to be something that I can move around in quite easily, It'll also stay in place while I'm wrestling. So it's always, we have to figure that one out beforehand.
Hey, fair is fair. I mean, first of all, the element of surprise, keep them wanting more, Miss Rachel Adams. I like your style. But no, I understand where you're coming from. And I look at it from a stance too as well. Number one, I'm sure it will be very beautiful and very dapper, as you always do, Miss Adams. But god dang, man, you have to have something that's comfortable, because wardrobe malfunctions are all the rage in LFC and a lot of the stuff. So I hear what you're saying,
Yeah, I feel like that's the complication, making it so it'll stay. Then you can
Absolutely. And we were talking about wrestling before. And I mean, from Sessions Wrestling, that's another an amazing community. I mean, Jennifer Thomas has done a lot of great work with women's athletes on fire, and the session community. Isn't it amazing just to see like how the underground of wrestling, underground of modeling, or any combative nature, like we mentioned, being put to the forefront. But like that's something that's great for the clientele as well, from the wrestling side of things and just fulfilling fantasy, so to speak, modeling in general. It's always great to have that fulfilling fantasy type of feel, you know?
Yeah, I feel like when I was a teenager, we had this thing. I was like 14, 15 years old. It was a bunch of us high school kids, and we ran something we called the OAWC, the Ohio Amateur Wrestling Circuit. And there's a couple of them that actually kept going with it. And they actually got like a rink, and they kept advertising for it, and they got like an audience to actually go see it. I thought that was really cool to see them do it. Like they went a different direction, because I went toward the modeling side, because I only really did that in high school. But a couple of them actually kept going and were able to, I think one of them ended up on Raw once, and it's just nice to see them actually be able to get from the teenager underground amateur wrestling circuit to be able to actually do something with it.
You see, people would frown upon that because it's like, oh, it's backyard wrestling. And mind you, we've seen backyard wrestling video games that had the Insane Clown Posse in it, for God's sake, and those sold, you know what I'm saying? But it's one of those things when you look at like a Seth Rollins now, like everybody's done the backyard wrestling because it's something that you want to imitate, art imitating life. Mind you, you have to have your own paddings and stuff and do it your own way. But, it's great to see the evolution of that to a training school to, like you mentioned, a Monday Night Raw, or being on live TV for pro wrestling. The evolutions are upon evolutions are amazing just to see, right?
Yeah, I feel like a lot of people frown on beginners, but you have to start somewhere. And you can't really frown on people for practicing and trying to perfect what they're doing so that they can do something professionally, because where else would you start? You don't just go from never doing it to being on TV. You kind of have to be able to start off in some kind of amateur way, to have somebody see you, to invite you to do something a little less amateur, and kind of work your way up the ladder. And there's not a lot of respect given to beginning producers or beginning models or photographers or wrestlers, I think, sometimes, because it feels like, oh, you're a beginner. And it's like, well, everybody was a beginner at one point. No one just starts off professional. So like, I've never looked down on the backyard stuff as long as people are doing it safely. Like sometimes I feel like people go for shock value, and they might not necessarily know the extent they're taking it, which is kind of risky. But I think just the concept of amateur, really anything, you kind of have to start there. I think no one's going to start off as a professional, in my opinion. You have to start off somewhere.
First of all, beautifully and eloquently said. I'm smiling from ear to ear because that was just so well said. And no, it's very true. I think when it comes to photographies and the modeling side of things, like it's not just what you see on camera or wrestling. Everyone has a role in the presentation, from the photographers, the director, what have you. A lot of people don't really realize the work that goes into really a lot of the acts and the endeavors and careers that we're talking about pursuing and being a part of. But it's one of those things where it's just like, don't hate beginners. You know what I'm saying? I mean, for me, I always look at it from a stance. I think you can agree with me on this. It's progression, succession, no regression. It means to continue to progress, and it'll lead to success, but we don't want to regress. So, I mean, it's like taking one step forward, one step back, but also still applying the craft and going forward, right?
Yeah. And I feel like everybody has the ability to learn something new. No one knows everything. No one's perfect at everything. So I feel like we should all constantly be trying to learn from other people. I'm not saying that, there aren't people who are really amazing at what they do, but I feel like there's always something new to learn from other people, because everyone does it a little bit differently.
I think what's great about it, it's an old saying, but it's very true and very adamant what we're talking about. You never stop learning, because that is so true in everything. You never stop learning. And I think what's great about it too is, as we wake up each and every day and we go out into this world and go into this thing that we call life, everything is new, everything is fresh. And like I said, we're still breathing, our hearts are beating, man, and it gives us more succession and a lot of success to go into the day and success in what we do. So, I mean, it's the beauty of the way, it's the nature of life, and it's the nature of the beast, so to speak, right?
Mm-hmm. Always learning. You have to always be learning.
And I got to
there's always a lot trying to learn and all the things I'm doing, because I feel like whenever anybody does, even if they're doing the exact same thing, they won't do it in the same way. So it's like, that's a good idea. I'm going to try it that way next time, because that's the way we all get better at what we're doing, is if we all work together to try and kind of build off each other.
Absolutely. And I got to say, from what we see from learning and everything that goes with you, the future is bright for you, Miss Rachel McAdams. And I cannot wait to see what you do continuous from the modeling side of things. And just in general, I think you're going to keep continuing to hit on all cylinders. I know myself, I love your work, and a lot of people who see the show love your work. And we want to see nothing but succession for you. And you are really hitting. And I got to, like I said, much praise. It's right where it's due.
Thank you. And I'm hoping to be on there so eventually. Eventually.
Eventually. Okay. Well, I'll be honest with you. When I had Bella Inc. on, she was like waiting for a little while. And then we got to LFC 26. Here's Bella Inc. So we're doing this. We're coming off of LFC Madness 3. I'm sure we'll see some Rachel Adams on our LFC screens. And just in general, we already are going to see it because we're on Roku when we do this. So, hey, we get to see your lovely face and put it out to the LFC masses. So, hey, we still get a little sample, right?
Mm-hmm. I'm excited for it because I knew a fair amount about it, but I know I learned a lot more about the LFC after being part of the brackets, because I know I was looking more into it and looking at all the different people that were part of it. And it's a very diverse group, which seems like it'd be awesome to be part of.
I will say this, LFC brings you everything from BJJ, brings you everything from jiu-jitsu, everything from mixed martial arts, professional wrestling, some Krav Maga, if you will, if you're Jolene the Valkyrie Hex. It gives you a lot of internal and external beauty, and I'm looking at one right now. So it's one of those things where, like Rachel Adams said so eloquently, it's very diverse. It's a fun time. It's an entertaining time. And you get to see beautiful women kicking ass and taking names and looking beautiful at the same time. So Rachel Adams coming soon to an LFC screen near you. I know it's going to happen. I'm hoping and I'm praying, and I know we're going to see it in the future. So before we close this out, Rachel Adams, anytime you want to come back on the show, the overture's here. I'd love to have you back for a round 2 and just keep on.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So before we close this out, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, it's the social media front. It's the social media rage. Please promote where everybody can follow you. The floor is yours, Rachel. Please go ahead.
All of my links are on racheladamsfantasies.com, but I'm on Twitter at Rachel_Adams2. And I'm Rachel Adams Model on Instagram. But really all of my links for all of my social media on Instagram, on Twitter, all of my websites are all on racheladamsfantasies.com.
I will say this, and I'm going to make another pop culture reference. You are like the Mariah Carey of fetish modeling, and just in general, you can deliver those sweet, sweet fantasies, baby. I see what you're doing, Miss Rachel Adams, with your Rachel Adams fantasies. All right. But yes, if you guys want to have your fantasies fulfilled and see some great content from bondage, beautiful imagery, and just in general in the fetish world, because everybody's got a preference, like the $1 Million Man used to say, everybody's got a price. But at this time, it's a wonderful environment. It's a wonderful community for a lot of the fans. And Rachel Adams, do you have any final words for the LFC universe who saw you in LFC Madness? We covered it on the YouTube. So you have any final words for your LFC fans and faithful that want to see you grace the LFC auspices in the future?
I'm really excited to be able to do that someday. I'm hoping to be on there. And I really appreciate all the people who supported me through the brackets, because I really didn't think I'd make it that far. So it's really awesome that everybody supported me with it. And I really appreciate it.
I love your passion and I love your determination. So folks, before we close this out, as I always say, it's the title of the show. It's my mindset, beauty, strength, and dominance, the 3 key elements that make women the work of art that they are. And Rachel Adams, I include you in those sentiments. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.